the cameraman who's operating the space shuttle camera is fully aware that the first object has held its position, and after the large orb has ascended from the lower atmosphere and the shuttle is moving away from the scene, the cameraman is actually zooming in at the end of the sequence to double check the position of the first luminous orb, and it's a fascinating piece of video. A few years ago there was an astounding book published. It's called The Day After Roswell, and it's written by a gentleman called Philip Corso, who's now dead. He had a military career that lasted more than 20 years, and during that time he served at the White House, and then he was a senior official at the Pentagon. And in this book, which is an astounding book, he clearly says that there is a war going on in space. In other words, NASA and the American military have designed weapons. He says in his book that some of the weapons are based on patents of the genius inventor Nikola Tesla. Philip Corso tells us that there are plasma beam weapons being used against these UFOs, and that sometimes these UFOs are hit. A special team then travel out to wherever it is in the world and collect the wreckage. Now, from the wreckage they back engineer any useful technology. In his book he clearly states that microchips, semiconductors, fiber optics, lasers, many other new metal alloys have all been back engineered from wreckage which they've collected from UFOs which have been shot down by the American government. I believe that what we're seeing with the footage from Space Shuttle mission STS-48, that we are seeing several intelligently controlled extraterrestrial craft. And yes, I do believe that the flashes are the firing of some very, very top secret weapon which is able to produce an electronic or electromagnetic plasma kind of death ray that is being used against these UFOs. I do believe that that is exactly what we're seeing.
The tether has broken and it's going away from it. Get it on the TV. The tether has broken. Copy.
Space shuttle mission STS-75, the tether incident. A lot has been said about this incident. Personally, I feel that most of the objects that you see are actual individual parts of the tether, just floating around in space, and that they're out of focus. It's a fascinating piece of footage, and I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't, quite a few UFOs coming into the scene to check out our technology, just the same as they've done many times before.
The crew can see the tether and see the satellites. It's beautiful. This view showing the satellite. Again, just moving into sunrise. 81 nautical miles now from Columbia.
You clearly hear one of the astronauts being told there's an object at your 11 o'clock position.
It's about your 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock going away. Don't worry about it.
And the other astronaut, who's obviously in the know, says don't worry about it.
Out there. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I suspect that the senior astronauts, the astronauts who've been up more than just once, are fully aware that there is a very large number of unexplainable objects flying around.
Never mind.
NASA spent gigantic sums of money during the 1960s, but most of it was spent on the ground, not in space. Huge American corporations, many of which were manufacturing hardware for the military, made gigantic profits designing space vehicles and, more importantly, life-sized models of spaceships, and even huge stage sets resembling the lunar surface. Someone in NASA had realized that after taking billions of dollars from the American people, if they couldn't make it to the moon, they would fake it to the moon.
Obviously, if you're going to somewhere that nobody has been before, you need to have a simulator which recreates that environment as closely as you can. If you're going to the moon, you recreate the surface of the moon. And here we see a section of the lunar surface created. It's about 30 foot high, 30 foot long, 35 foot long. Scale is given by the two people standing in front of it. There were plenty of simulation exercises, but the point is, and this should be taken into account in virtually everything that is discussed with the Apollo program. 400,000 people may have worked on the program in total, but none of them had a need to know more than his own job required. The people who were making the rockets didn't know what the people who were making the spacesuits were doing, because they had no need to know about that. Their job was to make the best models and the best simulation of the lunar surface that they could. And if we come up to this picture here, we see the 3 scales on which these models were built. We have here the whole moon as one unit. It stands about 20 foot high. We have here behind it a section of the surface of the moon. You'll notice it's curved. And here we have a more detailed section of the lunar surface.
What you're saying is that the images which we're told show a camera pointing out the window of the lunar module as it's coming into land on the moon could well have been filmed previously using these large-scale models.
That's right. It could well be that what we are looking at are films of realistic models. We have no means of knowing if they were actually taken on the lunar surface, or whether what we're watching is part of the simulation exercise and the training exercise. And you'll notice here on these models there is a camera track. A camera starting at this end, coming down here, would approach the moon, or appear to approach the moon, and become ever closer towards it. It's exactly what you would expect to see if you were flying to the moon. This is a simulation rig that was built. This is the command and service module of the Apollo program. And you'll notice that the window here looks out onto a block here, and there's another one here. They're curved. These are the screens onto which the lunar surface was projected as the craft made a simulated approach towards the lunar surface.
Is what we're seeing a mixture of fact and fiction?
It is fact. It is fiction. It's mixed together. It's hard to separate them until you examine it closely. If a spacecraft is in deep space, the only possible explanation for a light seen through the window of the spacecraft is the sun. It's the only bright light in space. If it's not the sun, then it has to be some other artificial light, which implies that that particular image is possibly fiction.
July 1961. NASA was soon being criticized for the flimsy construction of their hardware. The first orbital capsules did not even have windows in them for the astronauts to look out of. One of the most vocal critics was one of NASA's most respected astronauts, an all-American hero named Virgil Gus Grissom, who almost drowned when recovery helicopters were unable to lift his space capsule from the sea. After a successful journey into space, Gus Grissom almost died through NASA's bad planning. Or was this an early attempt to silence Gus Grissom? May 1963. Astronaut Gordon Cooper experiences re-entry problems in his Faith 7 rocket ship.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Roger, have a lift off and the clock is operating. That's the clock. Take my 7, base 7 on the way.
The prototype lunar module, known as